The Council's emissary hovered above the United Nations building, its crystalline voice echoing across the globe. Humanity, it declared, your sovereignty is revoked. Your future will now be decided by higher minds. Billions watched in silence. No warning, no diplomacy, just judgment from the stars. From their perspective, it was mercy. From ours, it was subjugation. But Earth did not kneel. Somewhere in the Pacific, a retired engineer whispered, "Not on my watch." In a frozen tundra, a teenager coded a defiance protocol. And across cities lit by rebellion, messages pulsed through neural nets. They expect obedience. Give them chaos. This was not a war of ships or weapons. It was a test of will, a collision of alien logic and human spirit. The Council assumed humanity would break. Instead, they witnessed something far worse, for them. They saw a species that remembers its chains and has vowed never to wear them again. Across the Orion Spur, the Galactic Concord had reigned for millennia. A coalition of over 300 species, unified not by empathy, but by logic, protocol, and a deeply ingrained belief in hierarchical order. Their empire was clean, calculated, and efficient, divided by castes, maintained by algorithms, and guarded by fleets that hadn't seen conflict in centuries. To the conquered, Earth was a statistical anomaly, a pre-FTL civilization that burned through resources like a dying star, fought among itself with primitive weapons, and broadcast its chaos into the void. Most thought we were a curiosity, a footnote in the great galactic archive. A few, more pragmatic, considered us a future problem to be managed before it grew teeth. And then came the probes. They expected ruins. They found networks. They expected tribal warfare. They found distributed governments, quantum encryption, and decentralized AIs running pet projects in people's basements. Above all, they found noise, culture, contradiction, innovation, and emotion, all bleeding through every layer of Earth's reality. The Concord operates on predictability. Their greatest strength is standardization. Their greatest weakness? Anything outside the algorithm. Humanity, by every metric, was a glitch in the model. Our advancements didn't follow clean lines. Our conflicts birthed creativity. Our setbacks forged resilience. To them, our history was terrifying. A species that had cracked nuclear power before achieving planetary unity. That had looked at extinction events and said, "Try again." That had weaponized music, memes, and math with the same passion. That worshipped chaos not out of malice, but out of a relentless need to grow, adapt, and overcome. So the Concord did what it had always done to emerging threats. It issued an ultimatum, not out of cruelty, but from a place of absolute certainty. Certainty that humanity, like so many before, would fold under pressure, accept integration, bow down. But Earth had a different idea because we weren't a single voice. We were 8 billion pulses beating out of sync, yet echoing the same defiant rhythm. No central government could control us. No single strategy could define us. We were memes and minds, instinct and intellect, dreamers and destroyers, all at once. And when faced with the cold perfection of galactic order, humanity did what it had always done best. It broke the pattern. It began with a flicker in Earth's orbital traffic systems. Unregistered anomalies, small, sleek vessels, slipped past our early warning satellites. They didn't fire, didn't transmit. They just watched. For 3 days, they hovered invisibly above megacities, research hubs, and military installations, siphoning data, mapping neural networks, scanning biometric patterns from space. Then, on the 4th day, they activated. Every global communication channel, civilian, military, encrypted, was overridden simultaneously. A holographic projection, identical across every screen, every device, even analog projectors, displayed the same towering figure, a Concorde Arbiter-class overseer. Its message was calm, diplomatic, final. Earth is to be incorporated. Your local governance structures will be preserved under supervision. Resistance will be considered illogical and corrected. There was no offer, no discussion, no context. To them, this was mercy, an automated intervention to prevent the cultural entropy they believed Earth was destined to trigger in the galactic order. At first, the world froze. The UN scrambled, militaries postured, billionaires went underground. Social media collapsed into panic. But deep in the chaos, something strange happened. The feed didn't just show the message. It showed the source, not a ship, a relay, a massive cloaked device embedded just outside lunar orbit. And someone, no one knows who, hacked it. The moment the override was traced, a live feed of the Overseer's central node appeared online. Thousands of humans flooded the stream, not to beg, not to protest, but to mock. Memes, jokes, edits, voiceovers. Within hours, the Galactic bureaucrat had a dedicated subreddit, a trending TikTok filter, and a dubstep remix. The image of the Arbiter, calm, severe, was photoshopped onto pizza boxes, protest banners, and anime thumbnails. The Conquered was stunned. They had expected psychological destabilization. But not this, because in humanity's refusal to fear, they saw something they hadn't accounted for. The stream didn't weaken us. It unified us, a single symbol to rally against. Not a monster, but a punchline. And in the margins of that chaos, coders, engineers, and rogue AIs began decoding the relay's language. They cracked it in 36 hours. The first human response, fired back through the same hijacked relay, wasn't diplomatic. It was a video. A lone man standing on a rooftop, flipping off the sky, holding a sign, "We decline your terms." The message was clear. Earth had received the ultimatum, and Earth was laughing in its face. The Concord expected retaliation, missiles, panic, primitive threats. Instead, they got something worse, improvisation. While diplomats scrambled behind closed doors, Earth's population became a swarm of decentralized defiance. Hacktivist collectives resurrected dormant satellites, piggybacking off old Cold War tech to map the Concorde's cloaked ships. In Nairobi, teenagers hijacked a weather drone to project anti-Concord graffiti over the skyline. In Buenos Aires, street performers staged mock trials of alien bureaucrats, streamed to millions. The Concorde's data models shattered. Their cultural specialists had no category for weaponized humor. Their security AIs flagged an entire genre, satire, as a mimetic threat. By the time they identified it, it had already reached the outer colonies. Even their own junior analysts began sharing human memes in secret. Then came the engineers. In an abandoned mining rig in northern Canada, a retired oil worker and his granddaughter repurposed drilling equipment into an electromagnetic spike array, primitive, unstable, and surprisingly effective. They called it the Earth Shrugger. When tested, it sent shock waves through low-orbit Concorde probes, scrambling their sensory systems. Meanwhile, in South Korea, a VR developer turned combat simulations into strategic sandboxes. Thousands of players logged into a massive multiplayer war game that, unbeknownst to many, was feeding real-time tactical patterns into an AI quietly learning conquered flight formations. In rural India, farmers encoded crop patterns into visual anomalies, ground-level signals that fooled Concorde scanners into thinking population centers had vanished. In New Zealand, marine biologists used bioluminescent algae to jam oceanic scans. Nothing was organized. Nothing was centralized. And that was the point. Humanity's strength wasn't its technology. It was its chaos. A chorus of noise, each voice dissonant, yet somehow harmonious in rebellion. Soldiers began painting symbols on their armor, chaotic spirals, ancient runes, cartoon characters. Civilians formed signal choirs, broadcasting pulses in patterns that defied AI logic. The Concorde tried to suppress the noise, jamming signals, deploying dampeners. But every countermeasure spawned a new form of resistance. One hacker collective developed a virus that converted alien code into interpretive dance videos. Another built a decentralized AI named Karen that auto-forwarded every Concorde threat back with a sarcastic tone correction. Across the planet, humanity didn't just resist. It performed. Every act of rebellion was a broadcast, every defense a statement. The Concorde had walked into a world not ruled by order, but by improvisation, creativity, and stubborn, relentless noise. They came expecting war. What they got was theater, and Earth had just opened its first act. The Concorde escalated, not with fire, but with silence. Entire orbital systems went dark. GPS signals twisted into nonsense. Power grids flickered as orbital relays were disrupted. Concorde drones, elegant and silent, descended like shadows over the skies of major cities. activating suppression fields that muted digital systems. They called it the calibration phase, a total information reset designed to isolate and disorient. On a dozen other worlds, this tactic had shattered resistance in hours. But Earth adapted. When the drones jammed Wi-Fi and satellites, humans fell back to walkie-talkies, ham radios, even physical runners. In Detroit, a postman on a bicycle became the communication lifeline between resistance hubs. In Tokyo, a retired jazz musician turned his rooftop trumpet into a signal relay, his melodies encoded with coordinates and status updates. The more Concorde systems tried to suppress, the more humanity rerouted. The field dampeners scrambled Concorde tech too. Their drones began drifting, misfiring. Their AI interpreters, built on rigid syntax and context prediction, failed to understand sarcasm-laced commands and deliberately confusing human syntax. One ship, tasked with enforcing suppression protocols in Europe, crashed into the English Channel after misinterpreting a meme graffiti on a cathedral that simply read, "Try me, toaster." But the true crisis came not from machines, but from morale. The Concorde had no protocol for emotional contagion. Their operatives, trained in efficiency and rational detachment, began exhibiting confusion, agitation, even fascination. A junior linguist refused to decrypt another human broadcast, calling it too beautiful to dismantle. A command AI in Sector 9 locked itself in a logic loop trying to parse an animated cartoon of a goose attacking a Concorde soldier with bread. Human unpredictability wasn't just confusing, it was contagious. Desperate, the Concorde initiated direct psychological warfare. They projected messages into human dreams using neural harmonics, hoping to instill fear. Instead, artists and gamers began reporting the coolest dreams ever and shared them as graphic novels, dream journals, and VR simulations. The attack became an art movement. By now, the Concorde systems were splintering. Fleet coordination broke down under latency errors caused by human jamming. Tactical models became obsolete within minutes. Local governors began demanding recall, unsure if Earth's resistance was decentralized genius or madness incarnate. The Concorde's most advanced model, the Overseer Prime, summarized the situation in a single report. Prediction horizon collapsed. Pattern deviation beyond acceptable thresholds. Recommend withdrawal or total planetary reclassification. In simpler terms, they were losing control, and they were starting to understand why. It wasn't a weapon that turned the tide. It was a story. Buried beneath centuries of memes and code, an anonymous user uploaded a file to the Concorde's hijacked datanet. It bypassed every firewall, every protocol, not through brute force, but by being unrecognized. It wasn't an attack. It was a fairy tale, a short animation, hand-drawn, jittery, filled with color and imperfections. It told the story of a tiny blue planet, fragile and loud, ignored by the stars. And yet every time the darkness came, the little planet didn't hide. It sang, it laughed, it fought, not because it was strong, but because it refused to be silent. The Concorde AI flagged it. Anomaly, possible malware, cultural weapon. It was too late. Within hours, it had spread across their networks like a dream virus. Analysts tried to purge it, but some hesitated. It wasn't logical. It wasn't efficient. But it made them feel something. Pity, awe, fear. The tipping point came when an arbiter, stationed in Earth's upper orbit, broadcast an unsanctioned message. I watched it, and I cried. A being engineered for sterile command, built to calculate and dominate, had admitted emotional response. The Overseer Prime issued a recall order. Too late. Word had spread. Concorde ships began drifting offline, their crews refusing to enforce the directive. Meanwhile, on Earth, a group of school children in Brazil launched balloons, thousands of them, on each a single word in every known Concorde dialect. Listen. Some exploded harmlessly. Others were intercepted. A few reached the high atmosphere, broadcasting audio loops of lullabies, stories, moments of human tenderness. Not propaganda, not defiance, truth. In a final act, Earth's global networks pulsed with a singular transmission. No threats, no speeches, just a montage. A firefighter carrying a child through smoke. A violinist playing through tremors. A mechanic high-fiving a robot. A child planting a tree in radioactive soil. One sentence lingered at the end. You saw our noise, but never our heart. And in that moment, the galaxy paused, because they had come to erase a species they did not understand. And now, they were beginning to wonder if that species might just be the key to understanding themselves. The withdrawal wasn't announced. It just happened. One by one, conquered ships blinked out of orbit, their engines humming with shame and uncertainty. Surveillance satellites went quiet. The skies, once full of watchers, returned to their ancient silence. The invasion never ended with a bang. It ended with a question they didn't know how to answer. Earth stood alone again, yet no longer the same. Governments tried to seize credit. No one listened. The real victory was owned by the streets, by the memes, by the engineers in garages, and the children who released messages to the stars. 1,000 unsung victories stitched themselves into a new global culture. Humanity had faced an empire and stayed human. Within weeks, remnants of Concord tech began appearing in civilian hands, not as weapons, but as puzzles. Scavengers repurposed dampener nodes into musical instruments. Artists painted murals using alien plasma dust. Engineers reverse-engineered medical nanobots from crashed drones and deployed them in makeshift clinics. Even Concord language protocols were absorbed into human slang, half mockery, half homage. In response, the Galactic Concord entered its first internal audit in over 8,000 years. Factions fractured. Philosophers questioned the core tenets of standardization. A new faction emerged, the Fractalist School, arguing that chaos, emotion, and narrative were essential components of advanced civilization. Their first manifesto was a translated copy of Earth's viral fairy tale, archived as Human File 001. Meanwhile, Earth changed. Not through conquest, but reflection. Borders blurred, collaboration flourished, cultures fused. Humanity didn't unify under flags, but under challenge. A new field of study emerged: xenocultural resilience, how chaos and contradiction could be formalized as survival tools. It wasn't about domination, it was about becoming unbreakable, not through strength, but through adaptation. Children in classrooms were now taught galactic diplomacy alongside meme warfare. Hackathons offered alien language decryption as weekend challenges. Poets wrote in code, coders answered in verse, and above it all, one quiet truth settled into the human soul. We were no longer invisible. We had been tested not for our firepower, but for our identity. And the galaxy had seen us, raw, flawed, beautiful, not as a threat, not as a resource, but as something entirely new and perhaps something necessary. They came expecting obedience. They found a planet that argued with stars, danced in chaos, and built dreams from defiance. We weren't the anomaly in their system. We were the answer their system had forgotten to ask. And now, the galaxy listens when Earth speaks.